there is a controversy swirling around America, you can guarantee my next guest is somehow in the middle of it. We love having him on the show. It's Jerome R. Corsi, Jerry Corsi. He is a staff reporter for WorldNet Daily, a Ph.D. from Harvard University in political science. He's written many books and articles, including the bestsellers The Obama Nation, which came out and warned us about Obama before he was actually selected, allegedly, to be president. Also, the late great planet, or the late great USA, talking about the North American Union and other issues, the Trans-Texas Corridor, things that we are told are just conspiracy theories. He proves it in his books. Also, Showdown with Nuclear Iran. That's something we got to talk about on today's show. Black Gold Stranglehold, the myth of scarcity and the politics of oil. Great reading. He joins us on the program, Jerry Corsi. Jerry, always good to have you, buddy.
Hi, Jack. Great to be back with you. Thank you.
Let's talk about the birther issue. They've given us a name. We're now the birthers.
Right.
And they always have these nasty names for us for these things.
Demonize us, make us look silly.
Bunch of new developments on the front. I had Mr. Berg on the program. We did about 90 minutes on this for, I think, the second or third time here last week. And I'm convinced that where there's smoke, there's fire, and that they doth protest too much. You know all of the issues. There's been a couple of new developments, Jerry, if you want to share that information with us.
Well, there's a whole series of new developments. And first of all, I want to comment on the demonizing birthers. What I wrote in the Abomination, and I continue to argue, is that this, Barack Obama and David Axelrod, the whole group in the White House, these are largely Saul Alinsky acolytes. They come out of the far left in Chicago. Saul Alinsky wrote Rules for Radicals. One of his rules came right out of the Communist Handbook. Demonize your opponents, and when you get asked a question you can't answer, ridicule the person asking the question. Don't answer the question. Just make a joke of the person and try to marginalize them so people won't listen to them. Well, that seems to be what the White House is doing. And listen to Robert Gibbs in his press conference saying, the birthers, and this is not an issue worthy of consideration. Well, look, all that we're asking for, all that I'm asking for is I'm saying, if President Obama, let's just take him at his word. He was born in Hawaii like he said he was. Well, all I want to see is the best evidence of that, the long-form original birth certificate of President Obama, to list the hospital, the doctor in attendance at his birth. And if President Obama is telling the truth, why does the White House have to go to such an extent of spending hundreds of thousands of dollars not releasing that document, ridiculing anybody who asks for it? And I'm an investigative reporter. It's a legitimate request.
Well, let me do my impersonation of Chris Matthews right now for our listeners all over the country, in fact, all over the world on the radio, okay? I've got Obama's birth certificate right here. Trust me. Just trust me.
Exactly, and the document then that Chris Matthews put on the television was the Certificate of Live Birth, which is the short form. And that short form, today in WorldNet Daily, we got a hold of the Nordyke twins' original long-form birth certificates. You can see the photostat. You can see how different they look. The Nordyke twins were born the day after Obama in Hawaii. It's all the information you'd expect, the hospital, the doctor, time of birth, the official who registered the birth with the state, all the dates.
Let me stop you right there. I thought that these records were destroyed. I thought that we weren't anyone born in 1961, and the Nordykes child born one day after Obama in the same hospital, allegedly, they have their long-form birth certificate. What's the disconnect here? What's the problem?
And, of course, Mrs. Nordyke kept these from the time the twins were born. But the issue that the birth certificates were destroyed, the long-form originals, that comes from John Klein, who is the head of CNN News, who wrote a letter to Lou Dobbs' producers and said, don't dare talk about the birth certificate because the issue's dead. The birth certificate was destroyed when the Hawaii Department went electronic in 2001. So I called up the Hawaii Department of Health, and their spokesperson, Janet Okubu, who's probably becoming far more famous than she ever wanted to be, said, no, we never destroyed any records. We have in file all the paper long-form birth certificates. They're right here. We never destroyed anything. So CNN, their president, I guess, even though he's the head of a news organization, he can't get his facts straight. And the documents do exist. And if Barack Obama had a long-form birth certificate, it's there to be released as soon as he gives his word that we can see it. The only thing that's preventing this whole controversy from going away is Barack Obama himself, who refuses to allow the American public to see the best evidence of his birth, the long-form birth certificate.
And if you don't trust the White House, you're not only a racist, but you're clinically insane. I saw last night there was a piece on this. Howard Dean, who's certainly not biased in any way, shape, or form,
normal. I mean, he's put together with a straight deck. He was
hosting the Keith Obama show. And he brought on some shill from the Nation who said this is kind of like the North American Union conspiracy. It's just a bunch of fringe nuts out there. Not actually. We have the evidence. Just shut up or we'll put you in an insane asylum somewhere. Says these credited reporters. Meanwhile, we know that Axelrod's kid just went to go work for Huffington Post and a lead writer at Newsweek went to go work with the Obama administration.
Well, it's all the ideological left-wing press. And they're ideologically motivated. They're no longer news people interested in objective truth. And, Jack, look, I'm getting myself ready to go to the Acorn-run Thought Reform School to get, political re-education, because obviously I'm a nutcase asking for an original document.
Yes, a candidate for the re-education camps, the Acorn re-education camps, yes.
I got my bags packed. Acorn sent me my letter. I'm ready to go.
Didn't they have those in communist China?
Yeah.
I guess they did.
And Vietnam and...
So let me hit you with a couple of questions.
Right.
So why didn't Obama's mama keep the original birth certificate somewhere in a lockbox, and why can't we see it like Eleanor Nordyke's?
Well, in fact, Barack Obama, in his Dreams from My Father, says she did, and he found it. And he talks about finding his original birth certificate. Of course, right after that, evidently, the dog ate it, because we can't find Barack Obama's original birth certificate, and he won't allow the State Department, which also should have a copy of his original birth certificate if Barack Obama got a passport, and he did. We're told, of course, we can't see any of Barack Obama's State Department passport records, and Barack Obama will not allow the Hawaii Department to release the long-form birth certificate or any of the other background documents they've got on his birth. These are all top-secret documents.
Yes. National security, I believe, is at stake here.
Right. They're right next to the X-Files, and, you can't see them.
Well, he's right. National security could be at stake because if there is no birth certificate or if we find out he's not the legitimate president, there could be some problems coming home to roost.
Well, and, you've got to say, Jack, in the final analysis, look, we're not the nutcases. We're just asking, I'm just doing my job. I'm an investigative reporter. And if you go back to Watergate, the 1972, the break-in occurred in June, and it wasn't, Richard Nixon won a landslide election in November. He beat George McGovern by taking every state except Massachusetts. It wasn't until August 74 that Nixon resigned over Watergate in disgrace. The Washington Post even gave it to two kids, Bernstein and Woodward, who were nothing at that time. No senior reporter in the Washington Post wanted to wreck their career going after an established president over this silly break-in. Well, okay, so I'm willing to take the abuse, and I'm willing to investigate it, but I'm doing the same thing Woodward and Bernstein did. Of course, the mainstream media, ideologically to the left, loved it when Richard Nixon was the target.
Let me make another point on that, too, if I could, Jerry. I worked to expose Bush for 8 years, okay? Right. And then I was called an American-hating liberal. Now I'm a racist right-wing extremist, the same guy, of course, as most of my listeners understand. Wasn't it the Democrats, the Obama supporters, I guess call them quasi-liberals, faux liberals, weren't they the ones out there saying, why aren't the Cheney and Bush more transparent? Where are we going to get the truth? Why can't we ask questions? Aren't we good Americans if we ask questions? Now all of a sudden the spigot's turned off and we're not allowed to ask questions and we're called insane or racist.